Aston has just produced a maiden resource on a nickel deposit that we found about 15 months ago. It's called Bardwell Boomerang. As well, we've recently produced a gold resource on the property. And that was the original exploration that we did, was for gold. I'll walk you through it here. A little bit about the company. ASO is the symbol on the Australian exchange, and largest shareholder is our executive chairman, Tolga. We are about $120 million market cap, and we're a very lean team of basically geologists, and that will likely change very shortly as a result of these discoveries and these new resources that we've just produced. So we're located just 60 kilometers south of Timmins by road. Very easy access year-round, no problem. As I said, we produced 2 maiden resources this year, one for gold, one for nickel. And of course, being in the Timmins camp, you have access to people and, cheap power, etc., good access, good politics. So, we've got all that going for us. As we, the whole reason the nickel came about is we were exploring on this Aston deposit, as you can see in the red blob at the top of the map here. As we were extending our drilling eastward, we encountered, I think we hit like a meter of 2,000 grams per ton. So we were getting excited. And then we got these long intersections with pyrrhotite. So they didn't assay well for gold, but they had long intersections of low-grade nickel. But they weren't in the proper rocks. So basically what we did is we chased that mineralization southward into an ultramafic intrusive that shaped like a boomerang there, and made our discovery at the south end called Bardwell. One of the first holes was 164 meters of over 0.5% nickel. So from there we kind of systematically did some geophysical work and whatnot, and then began to drill that unit out. And what we came up with, here's a 3-dimensional view of both the nickel deposit and the gold deposits, Aston and Sorolla. So the one thing about the gold deposit I'll say is that we haven't closed it off, especially to the east, that it's wide open. We've got another 8 kilometers of untested unit, if you will, which is basically the Kirk-and-Larder Fault. So very productive unit. We're basically between Cote, which is 20 million ounce deposit, nearly built, and Young-Davidson to the east of us. So we're in gold country here. The deposit and the resource, so indicated is going to be your red and inferred is your green. I think one of the things to take away is the unclassified, so what's not in the numbers is the purple. So, we're depending on cutoff grades you want to use, we can get up to 1.7 billion tons at a 0.27 nickel grade, or we can go to sort of 500 million tons at a 0.32. A lot of that, all that purple's unclassified, so obviously this thing could get a lot bigger if you wanted to. So here's your tonnage grade curve. So where the lines cross, and in that region is effectively where we are emphasizing the tonnage and the grades should be. So it's somewhere in between 500 million tons at 0.32 or a billion at 0.3. And just under 10% of that nickel equivalent grade is cobalt. It's recoverable with the nickel. I'll get to that in the next slides. But that's the ranges we're looking at, between effectively 500 million tons to 1 billion tons at around a 0.3 nickel grade. These are the parameters that our consultants used, for your rough economic parameters, and basically, even if you cut that tonnage in half, you're looking at one of the largest new producers in terms of, likely in North America for sure. Low strip ratio, 1.3. It starts at surface. And using roughly today's nickel cobalt prices, you can play with those numbers, but in the end, it all comes out quite profitable quickly, very quickly. A little bit of a close-up and the types of grades that we were getting. I think what the resource did tell us is if you tighten up the drilling, you'll likely increase the grade, especially if you focus on the parts of the deposit that are basically near a regional fault, which tends to juice the grade up. And I'll explain that in a later slide here. I think one of the key things everybody wants to know as soon as you make the first, discovery is it, can your nickel be liberated in a normal circuit? Right away, the ratios between the aqua regia and the 4-acid assays, basically one dissolves the sulfides and the other one dissolves everything. If that's high, then you pretty much guaranteed you have a sulfide deposit. Your nickel is hosted in sulfides. We have a very high ratio. That was the first step. Our initial metallurgical work has basically produced saleable concentrates. They range between 11 and 20%. And we get overall recoveries of 60+%. And this is first pass, so this is coarse grind. It's not a closed circuit, it's an open circuit. We haven't really done much yet, in terms of tweaking, flocculants and that sort of thing. So for a first pass, we're getting very good recoveries and a very nice looking concentrate. Size-wise, we're getting up there, and you got to remember this is about a 15-month-old project since discovery. So, depending on the cutoff grade you use, we're up there with some of the bigger new deposits. And if you were to, I believe, apply a recovery factor to that, we'd probably look even better on this graph. Regionally, this basically will show you the relationship between the gold and the gold horizon and the nickel. So the horseshoe or the boomerang shape, you can see that's where the resource lies. The purple east-west unit is the Kirkland-Larder Fault, so that's where your gold deposits are and your potential going eastward. All these other light purple units have very, very high prospectivity. We already have some data in them, so it's likely they'll be nickel bearing to some degree. One of the things basically that has pushed the nickel into a higher level, basically out of the silicates, so it's not hosted in silicates, not hosted in alloys, is a regional fault that runs right through our boomerang unit, and it's basically upped the alteration. It's pushed the nickel further, even out of the pyrrhetites and into the pentlandites and the millerites. So we have high tenor nickel sulfides. as a result of that kind of natural upgrading, if you will. So that's an interesting exploration target now. You know, your dunites, your ultramafics, but they require structure to push that nickel a little further. Our gold, I'll just speak quickly on the gold. That's what we started with. So the Aston zone, and you can see the gap in the middle. That's where we're finding these extreme high grades, but it was in a kind of a fault zone. And this nickel, low-grade nickel mineralization was coming into the system there, which forced us to go south and into the true nickel-bearing units. But our extension drilling to the east actually added close to 900,000 ounces in that Sorolla zone. So there's a number of new parallel planes that we've discovered. It's wide open to the east. Even the kind of the boundaries aren't set. Some of those small squares are basically single drill holes that we have yet to follow up on. So a lot of gold potential yet here along that 8 kilometers of untested strike, and even within the Sorolla, as well in where the high grade was in that fault zone. We just haven't quite nailed the structure down, the host structure for that yet. So that's Aston. I'm happy to take a few questions.